you're watching LaRouche Pack, or formerly LaRouche Pack, now Promethean Actions, Saturday night class for June 15th. This is the second of a two-part series by Will Wertz on Cardinal Nicolaus of Cusa, the great leader of the Renaissance of the 15th century. Just to briefly introduce Will, he was a longtime close associate who worked directly with Lyndon LaRouche for decades. And he was subjected to a judicial railroad like President Trump and sent to prison with Lyndon LaRouche in 1989. He spent his time in prison translating works of Cardinal Nicolaus of Cusa, which he eventually published in a book. And he said in the write-up publicizing the class, which you may have seen, especially the first class, that Nicolaus of Cusa's ideas, the ideas he developed, were critical to the American Revolution, the American system of political economy. And he described that somewhat in the previous class. Cusa also played a foundational role in the creation of modern science out of the Renaissance. And it's this side of the Cusa legacy, which I think Will is going to emphasize tonight. So let me give it over to him and let him begin.
Okay, thank you, Tony. What I would like to just stress is that there is no real dichotomy between Nicolaus of Cusa's contribution to political economy and the creation of the sovereign nation state on the one hand, and his contributions to modern physical science on the other hand. In fact, his view was that the creation of a sovereign nation state was an invention that was coherent with the nature of man and could uniquely promote man's nature as in the living image of the creator. His basic idea is that man has the capacity for creativity. That's what defines him. And you have to have a society which fosters the development of the creativity of the individual. This has obviously not always been the case. In the dark ages of the 14th century, when Europe lost perhaps a third or even as much as a half of its population due to the plague, you had oligarchical institutions which did not foster creativity, but did just the opposite. They suppressed creativity. They reduced human beings to serfs. And over history, the same oligarchical system has been responsible for slavery. But the Renaissance, which Nicolaus of Cusa contributed to, was a completely different concept. It was, what kind of institutions do we have to have in order to promote man's actual nature as creative? And what institutions do we need in order to develop the physical universe, which Nicolaus of Cusa saw as the mission of man. Man as a microcosm responsible for creatively developing the physical universe to higher levels of organization, which can be the basis for a growing population. And although it wasn't an issue in his time, that's also what's necessary if man is to colonize space, which is the extraterrestrial mission that mankind has. We're not limited to this planet Earth, for instance. So what I want to develop today is exactly what is the nature of the physical universe that it can be developed. Now, of course, today the prevailing view is that man's industrial activity is destroying nature. And that's where we have this ideology of climate control come in, which basically says, which is an anti-human conception, that human activity is responsible for destroying nature, and therefore we have to stop human creativity, we have to stop human industrialization, and we have to reduce the world's population from over 6 billion people, maybe close to 7 billion people, down to a level of 1 billion people. What is behind this ideology is the concept of entropy. And this concept of entropy, just like the concept of climate change, these all derive from the views of somebody like Thomas Malthus, who believed that that we could not sustain a growing population, that the agriculture couldn't sustain a growing population. But the American system historically, for instance, Friedrich List, argued just the opposite, that through the development of science, through the application of technology, the land can in fact produce more food than it currently does, and can sustain a growing population. So these ideologies of climate change, the ideology of entropy, these are very similar to the ideologies of the oligarchy throughout history, which such for instance as the Ptolemaic system, which argued that the Earth was the fixed center of the universe. And this idea actually persisted for about 1,500 years. And so what Nicolaus of Cusa did with his writing was to lay the basis for overturning the Ptolemaic system. He laid the basis for the revolution in astronomy created by Johannes Kepler. He laid the basis for the development of the notion of the transfinite by Georg Cantor, which is very important in terms of the idea that we can, as a human species, create new ideas, develop new technology, which results in higher order forms of production with greater energy flux density, for instance. And also the idea that which we'll see that Nicolaus of Cusa very strongly suggests, the idea that we need to increase the potential relative population density on the planet Earth as part of a concept of a physical economy which is anti-entropic, that actually grows. There are no limits of growth. This is another example, the idea that there are limits to growth, along with climate change and so forth, which are fraudulent ideas with no scientific basis, which were imposed upon humanity by an oligarchy in order to maintain its political control. Now, what I wanted to do is I'm going to go through some of some of the individuals, scientific individuals who were influenced by Nicolaus of Cusa. I've mentioned Kepler, I've mentioned Cantor. Another one is Vernadsky, a Russian scientist who developed the notion of the biosphere and the noosphere. And we will find all of the ideas of in these individuals, all of whom influenced the thinking of Lyndon LaRouche in particular, in the writings of Nicolaus of Cusa. Let me first cite Kepler, Johannes Kepler. Kepler wrote in The Secret of the Universe the following: "For in this one respect, Nicolaus of Cusa and others seem to me divine, that they attach so much importance to the relationship between the straight and curved line, and dared to liken a curve to God, a straight line to his creatures. And those who tried to compare the Creator to his creatures, God to man, and divine judgments to human judgments did not perform much more valuable a service than those who tried to compare a curve with a straight line, a circle with a square. Then we have Cantor, who developed, as I said, the notion of the transfinite. And what he wrote is, in respect to his theory of manifolds, by a manifold or aggregate, I generally understand every multiplicity which can be thought of as one, any totality of definite elements which by means of a law can be bound up into a whole. And I believe that in this, I am defining something which is related to the Platonic ideas, as well as to that which Plato in his dialogue, the Philebus, or the highest good, calls the Mictone. He counterposes this to the apeiron. These are Greek terms, and I may not be pronouncing them correctly. Most likely I'm not. The unlimited, indeterminate, which I call the non-genuine infinite, as well as to the peros, the limit, and explains it as an ordered mixture of the two latter. He also says Plato's concept of the infinite is an entirely different one than that of Aristotle. Similarly, I find points of contact for my conceptions in the philosophy of Nicolaus of Cusa. Then we have Vernadsky. He wrote the following. One of the predecessors of the ideas of Copernicus was Cardinal Nicolaus of Cusa, to whom I have previously referred. The son of German peasants, a faithful and passionate representative of the Catholic Church, he was one of the most original and prestigious minds of his time. In his works, we find the seeds of a variety of ideas that have since become a part of contemporary thought. He died in 1464, soon after the discovery of printing, and his works were left in manuscript form, threatened with the same fate as was common with many of his predecessors, becoming known only much later, when all direct living contact with them had disappeared. But the works of Nicolaus of Cusa avoided this fate. He was published 40 years after his death, but before his direct influence had waned. The first, now extremely rare edition appeared in Rome in 1501. I might add, I think there was an edition in Paris in 1515. It was the first appearance in human thought since the ancient Greeks of the representation of the earth turning on its axis and revolving around some point in space, which Cusa considered to be not the sun, but rather a certain pole of the universe. We see everywhere the influence of these ideas of Cusa, with which Copernicus was also acquainted. The significance of the works of Cusa was also seen in other areas of thought as well, and his works are continually cited, primarily by the more innovative spirits throughout the course of the 16th and 17th century. Could you show just the picture of Cusa's tomb, Tony?
You bet. Give me just a sec.
All right, I showed this last week. This is a picture of Nicolaus of Cusa in the church St. Peter in Chains in Rome. This is where he's buried. And could you show the picture of the Cusa book, please? This is the book that was published in the early 1990s of translations that I did of Nicolaus of Cusa. This does not include two of his major works, On Learned Ignorance and On Catholic Concordance, which had already been translated, so I didn't translate those anew. But there are many works here which had never appeared before in English. And then the Beware the British East India Company. I just cite this book because it deals with the impact of Cusa on the American system. Can you then show the quadrature of the circle? All right, so one of the main advances that Nicolaus of Cusa made was that he proved that a circle cannot be squared. Archimedes had arrived at a numerical value for pi, but what Nicolaus of Cusa argues is that number cannot represent an actual circle, because it's based on the idea that there's some equality between a polygon that is an object with straight lines, such as a square, a triangle, and so forth, and a circle. And Nicolaus of Cusa proves that there is no equality between the two. The basic idea is, many argue that if you increase the number of sides infinitely in a polygon inscribed within a circle, that it becomes equal to a circle. Or if you circumscribe the circle with a polygon with increasing numbers of sides, that it becomes equal to the circle. But Nicolaus of Cusa proved that this was not the case. What he said is, a square inscribed in a circle passes with respect to its size from being a square which is smaller than the circle to being a square larger than the circle, without ever arriving at its equal. The circle's area remains incommensurable to any area of the non-circle. Every polygonal perimeter falls short of the circumference, and every polygonal area remains disproportionately behind the area of the circle. No precisely equal non-circle magnitude can be given for a circular magnitude. And the point that he makes is as follows. Since polygonal figures are not magnitudes of the same species as a circular figure, even if a polygon can be found that comes nearer in magnitude than another to a given circle, the proposition nonetheless holds true that in respect to things which emit of a larger and smaller, one does not come to an absolute maximum in existence and potentiality. So the basic point that he's making here is that the circle is a different species than a polygon, and they are not equal. You can come up with an approximation as Archimedes did, but they are not equal. And the basic idea here is that the circle, as Lyndon LaRouche pointed out, is ontologically superior to a polygon. It is as the cause to its effect, because you can create a polygon from a circle, from circular motion, by folding it. If you fold a circle once, you create a straight line, then fold it again, and you've got 4 points, which can then on the perimeter of the circle, which can then be connected, creating a square. So the square can be created by folding. Basically, it's enfolded within the circle, and it can be created by unfolding the circle. But you cannot arrive at the circle from the square. And this is the origin of the idea of a transcendental number, and is suggestive of Cantor's notion of the transfinite. And this is what Kepler is referring to when he talks about Nicolaus of Cusa. Now, in Unlearned Ignorance, what Nicolaus of Cusa does, and you can remove this picture from at this point, Tony. Thank you. What he does is he makes the point that there is no fixed center or fixed circumference of the physical universe. What we will, and in saying that, what he does is lay the basis for, although not explicitly developing it, but lay the basis for Kepler's notion of elliptical orbits. And he destroys the idea that the Earth is a fixed center of the universe, but he also proves that in advance of Copernicus that the universe is not heliocentric, that the sun is not a fixed point in or center. Now, let me just indicate some of the things that Nicolaus of Cusa says, which led to this revolution brought about by Kepler. what he says is that God is present everywhere in such a way that he is present nowhere. And that what is caused can never be raised into equality with its cause. This goes back to the question of the circle and the polygon, right? That the polygon can never be, which is cause, can never be raised to equality with its cause. And when Nicolaus of Cusa says that God is present everywhere in such a way that he is present nowhere, what he actually is leading up to is the idea that God is the center and the circumference of the universe. So let me just read some of what Cusa says. If it is not possible for the world machine to have as a fixed and immovable center either our perceptible earth or air or fire or any other thing, for with regard to motion, we do not come to an unqualifiedly minimum, i.e. to a fixed center. If the world did have a fixed center and circumference, it would have its own beginning and end within itself, and it would be bounded in relation to something else. And beyond the world, there would be both something else and space. But all these consequences are false. Therefore, since it is not possible for the world to be enclosed between a physical center and a circumference, the world, of which God is the center and the circumference, is not understood. And although the world is not infinite, it cannot be conceived as finite, because it lacks boundaries within which it is enclosed. Now, Aristotle believed that God was infinite, but that which is created is finite. Nicolaus of Cusa introduces a completely different idea, which is that everything created is a finite infinite. It is everything created is created by the creator, and therefore it shares in infinity, even though it is created and it is finite. And that's a completely different concept, which also leads to Cantor's notion of the transfinite. So what Nicolaus of Cusa further writes is, the earth cannot be the center of the universe and cannot be devoid of all motion. Just as the earth is not the center of the world, so the sphere of fixed stars is not its circumference. The earth is moved. Neither the sun nor the moon nor the earth nor any sphere can by its motion describe a true circle, since none of these is moved about a fixed point. In other words, if you don't have an immovable fixed point or center of the universe, then you cannot have a true circle, because every circle requires a fixed center. So therefore, the orbits cannot be perfectly circular, which is why I said that what Cusa does is he leads towards the development by Kepler of elliptical orbits. Whereas before that, everyone looked at the orbits as circular. And he proves that that's not the case. Nicolaus of Cusa also proves that the physical universe is not characterized by linearity. It's not all by straight lines, but by curvature. He says, curvature follows upon finitude, since the line is curved because it is not the maximum line. So that has many implications, including it devastates the false idea that the earth is flat. How could it be flat and linear? It's characterized by curvature. Now, those are some of the revolutionary consequences of Nicolaus of Cusa's writing. This is primarily from two writings on the circle. He deals with that in On Learned Ignorance. He also deals with it in a writing called On the Quadrature of the Circle, written in 1450. And then his discussion of astronomy, which leads into Kepler, is in his work On Learned Ignorance, which was written in 1439 approximately. Now, in terms of what I would like to discuss is another idea of Lyndon LaRouche, which is the idea of the simultaneity of eternity, or timeless time. Nicolaus of Cusa calls it timeless time. The basic idea is that, again, God is present in everything, even though he is not he is not in any one place in particular. And the idea here is that if man, and Nicolaus of Cusa writes this in a number of his works, if man rises to the level of creative intellect, he is actually in the level he's raptured, as he actually says, into a third heaven, which is the heaven of eternity. He is in time, but his mind is in eternity. And there's a in one of his works called On Actual Potential, he uses the metaphor of a top, a child's toy, to get at this idea. Could you put up the top?
I will. That's
Okay.
the top, right? Yeah.
All right. This is from a work called On Actual Potential. And I'll just go through what Nicolaus of Cusa says about this. He says, let us describe a circle, BC, which is the circle at the top, which is being rotated about a point, as with the upper circle of a top. And let there be another thick circle, DE, which is the circle on the bottom. It is not true that the faster the movable circle is rotated, is it not true that the faster the movable circle is rotated, the less it seems to be moved? All right. So in other words, you take the top circle, if it's moving faster, it seems not to be moved. He's pointing to a paradox, which it could be. It basically, it's at maximum speed. It is at rest. So he says, suppose then that the possibility to be moved is actual in it. Suppose that the top is actually being moved as fast as possible. In that case, would it not be completely motionless, since the motion would be infinite velocity? Points B and C would be temporally present together at point D. Right? If the top circle is moving at maximum velocity, B and C would be both present at point D, in which is the fixed circle. Without it's being the case that B was temporally prior to C, right? So B would not be, because it's moving so fast, B doesn't come before C. For if B were temporally prior to C, the motion would not be maximal and infinite. And yet there would not be motion, but would be rest, since at no time would points B and C move away from the fixed point D. Hence, the maximum motion would at the same time also be minimal motion or no motion. In that case, just as the opposite points B and C would be always at point D, would they not also always be at the opposite point from D, namely at E? Would this not likewise hold true for all intermediate points of the circle BC? Therefore, the whole of the circle would at every instant be simultaneously present at point D, and the whole of the circle would be not only at D and E, but also at every point of the circle DE. Let it suffice then that by means of this image and symbolically, we are somehow able to see that if the circle BC were illustrative of eternity and the circle DE were illustrative of time, the following propositions are not self-contradictory: that eternity as a whole is at once present at every point of time, and that God, as the beginning and the end, is at once and as a whole present in all things. Okay, I hope you can see me, because I've lost
Yeah, we see you.
Okay, so I'll just continue. All right, so now,
Want me to take down the top or leave it up?
yeah, you can take down the top and put up the next one,
Oh, okay.
which is on the three domains: being, life, and understanding. Now, this comes from Nicolaus of Cusa's writing called On Beryllus. And what you have to understand is that Vernadsky, the Russian scientist, who developed the notion of that there are three domains: the non-living or abiotic, the biosphere, and the noosphere. This idea is derived from Nicolaus of Cusa, and you can see this in this chart. And this is very important because it basically establishes, as Vernadsky developed and Lyndon LaRouche also further developed, that the that these three domains are multiply connected, and as a whole, they represent the noosphere. In this in this graphic, what he's describing is the being, living, and understanding, and they're being created out of nothing by the creator. So let me read his description. Let the line AB be a similitude of the truth and stand between the first truth and nothing. Let B be the end of the similitude in respect to the nothing. B should be folded over C in an enfolding motion toward A, and thus represent the notion with which God summons from non-existence to existence. The line AB is fixed, so long as it egresses from the origin as AC does, and movable so long as it is moved enfoldingly over C toward the origin. In this motion, CB with CA causes various angles, and CB unfolds by means of this motion different similitudes. First, it causes, in a less formal similitude, an obtuse angle, which is its being. Then, in a more formal similitude, an angle, which is its life. And then, in the most formal and most acute angle, it causes its understanding. The acute angle participates more in the activity of the angle, and in its simplicity, it is more similar to the first origin. And it is in the other angles, namely in that of life and of being. Likewise, the angle of life is in that of being. And what intermediate differences there are between being and life and understanding, and what can be unfolded, you will see likewise in the enigma. Now, what Nicolaus of Cusa writes is that God is potential itself. And the potential itself is the potential of the potential to be, of the potential to live, and the potential to understand. So in that way, these three domains, the understanding, living, and being, are multiply connected because they are all images of the potential itself. Their potential derives from the potential itself. So Nicolaus of Cusa continues, the potential to be is an image of the potential itself. The potential to live, an image of the potential itself. And the potential to understand, an image of the potential itself. The potential to live is a truer image of it, and the potential to understand is a still truer image. Everything is nothing other than the appearance of the potential itself. In other words, everything which is created, whether it's non-living, living, or cognitive, in the case of human beings, is an image of the potential itself or of the creator. They derive their potential, these three domains, from the creator. And what he says is everything is nothing other than the appearance of the potential itself. There's another work by Nicolaus of Cusa called The Not Other, in which he says that the other, something which is created, is not other than other. It derives nowhere, so anything created derives its existence from the not other, referring to the creator, who is not anything in particular and is not located in any particular place. And he says the potential to choose enfolds in itself the potential to be, the potential to live, and the potential to understand. It is the potential of the free will. Now, the basic point here is that if the nature of the universe created by the potential itself, that is God, who's also Nicolaus of Cusa calls actual potential, enfolds cognitive existence, creative reason, in the case of human beings, the biosphere, and the non-living. And those are unfolded over time, then this is a universe which cannot perish because it's characterized by the potential to become. And this is what Cantor describes as a transfinitum. The universe is characterized by becoming, and man is the highest form of created being, who is in the image he's a living image of the creator, is a microcosm who is responsible for developing further the potential to become of that which has been of that which has been created by the creator. So you see, there's nothing here which would lead to a notion of entropy, that the universe is winding down, or the universe, or the idea of Norbert Wiener, who wrote that essentially, if mankind develops the universe and it is characterized by neg entropy, then since the overall universal law of the universe is entropy, his very success will lead to doom. That's the idea that's prevalent in the climate change mentality. But what Nicolaus of Cusa is developing here is that the universe is characterized by a potential to make, the potential to become, and the potential to have become. And that therefore the universe can never cease. It does not perish. It is perpetual. And it is not eternal, but it is perpetual. And the nature of the universe is that it goes from one level of organization to a higher order of organization, as opposed to being entropic. So this is what's called anti-entropy. And the importance of this in political economy and in the American system of political economy in particular is that Nicolaus of Cusa is proving that the nature of the universe is such that it is perpetual, it does not cease, it does not collapse, and that it in fact develops to the extent to which human creative intellect is developed through society, so as to realize new breakthroughs in knowledge and application of those ideas in forms of technology, which can sustain a growing population and also contribute to increases in the cognitive power of each individual within society as a whole. That's a completely different idea than that of the Anglo-Dutch system of of Thomas Malthus, of Adam Smith, John Maynard Keynes, and so forth. We don't have to control population. We have the basis and responsibility to develop population, both absolutely, but also in terms of the intellectual power of the individual in society. And we have the responsibility and the ability to invent forms of organization, such as the sovereign nation state or a national banking system, so as to facilitate that increase in the anti-entropic nature of the physical universe through the anti-entropic development and application of the human mind. In the American system, this is called the productive powers of the human mind. Friedrich List, for instance, said that talked about mental capital. That what we do is we have mental capital that we invest in order for the society to continue to grow. And so these ideas in physical science are not divorced from Nicolaus of Cusa's contributions, including the idea that government should be by the consent of the governed, and the idea of the sovereign nation state. All of these have one thing in common, which is that the human beings have free will and have the capacity to choose to develop the anti-entropy of the universe, because they're in the living image of the creator, and therefore they have a mission to fulfill that purpose which the creator has given man. You see this in Genesis, that man should multiply and be productive, and that man is created, man and woman are created in the living image of the creator. And that's the basic idea of the revolution that Nicolaus of Cusa carried out. Lyndon LaRouche has argued that what man should do is to become wittingly in the image of the creator. We should become self-consciously in the living image of the creator in order to carry out such a mission. He referred to it as human noetic will. Nicolaus of Cusa calls it a willing mind. That's the basic idea of human free will. No oligarchical system is designed to foster that, but rather to suppress it. Any supranational institution is contrary to the nature of the human being and to the nature of the physical universe. And that is the basic revolution brought about by one individual, and who influenced people like Kepler, like Georg Cantor, like Vernadsky, and like Lyndon LaRouche. And these are the ideas that we need in this nation right now and throughout the world. These are the ideas that are essential to understanding where we go as a human species.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So I'd encourage people to discuss, raise questions, raise your hand, and raise your hand by pressing *9 on a cell phone, or you have a raised hand icon on your screen of your desktop or tablet. Press that to raise your hand. I'll call on you, and then unmute to speak by the microphone icon on your laptop or *6 on your smartphone. Did you want to say anything, Bruce? I see you put your...
Yeah, I just wanted to, while people are raising their hands and getting in the queue, I just wanted to add that this ideas that Will just laid out about Cusa were also very relevant to Einstein's work and our modern notions of relativity. His idea, which Einstein later developed as a finite but unbounded universe, speaks or reflects Cusa's idea of the center being everywhere and nowhere. And Einstein, because this was a great paradox, because of course Einstein insisted, based on the other idea of Cusa as well, that the straight lines don't really exist, and therefore reflecting Riemann's work, that if the universe has any curvature at all, no matter how small, it has to be bounded. And therefore, and that creates a paradox, like the quadrature of the circle, that how can something be finite, but also unbounded? And Einstein developed a pedagogy for that, to try and illustrate that. But this is a very important idea because it also, by its very nature, implicates the whole question of anti-entropy, that the universe is not a closed system. This is one thing that everybody misses in the question of trying to apply the second law of thermodynamics to the universe as a whole, because they treat the second law of thermodynamics applies experimentally to a closed system, like a heat-powered machine. And therefore, and they extrapolate from that the universe is a closed system and therefore is characterized by always increasing entropy. But the universe is not a closed system and is constantly developing. But it's not developing around a center, it's developing everywhere at the same time in an unbounded but nevertheless finite way. That is, at any given moment, the universe has a finite characteristic, but it's unbounded in the sense that it's always in the process of ongoing development. And this, I think, is, what you point out, Will, about Cusa is very important, and why LaRouche and the Power of Labor educational series that we went through earlier this year emphasized the importance of Cusa to understanding physical science and economics. And I think it's really important that we revive the appreciation of Cusa in modern science and in our educational system as well. So the work you've done by translating Cusa is very important in that regard. And also Lyndon LaRouche's efforts to emphasize Cusa has been very important in that regard. I would encourage everybody in our orbit here to really dig into Cusa. It can be difficult at first, but I think you've given us enough of a beginning, a primer, that you can roll up your sleeves and get into it. And I would really encouraging people to get to know Cusa like you have.
Just want to mention two things. The first work that I read of Nicolaus of Cusa was On Learned Ignorance, and it was actually a translation that had been done in the 1930s through one of Franklin Roosevelt's public works programs that actually provided funding, not just for typical jobs, but also for such work as in the arts, which included translation of On Learned Ignorance. And also in the 1970s, when I was in Seattle, Washington, I took a trip to the Tri-Cities area in Eastern Washington, where the Manhattan Project was located. And in a museum there at the time, there was a display which included a reference to Nicolaus of Cusa. So he actually played some role in the development of nuclear energy, in addition to what I've developed further. But this idea of that you were talking about, of the finite but unbounded universe, the interesting thing is that, of course, what you're talking about is it's a finite it's Cusa's notion of the finite infinite, which is what Georg Cantor saw as similar to his idea of the transfinite. That the idea here is that the created universe, or the potential to become, it's finite, but it's characterized by a succession of higher order hypotheses and forms of organization of physical economic activity. And but what Cusa is saying is that it's bounded, but it's bounded by God. It's bounded by God, who is the circumference in the center of this universe, which is otherwise a universe characterized by a transfinite order and process.
Mhm. I'm curious, what was the reference to Cusa in this? This was a museum on the development of nuclear energy?
Yeah. So I think, as I recall, it was a reference to unlearned ignorance.
Oh.
But it's so long ago that I don't have anybody who can go look at the museum to see what the reference it was, if the museum still exists.
Well, if you have any listeners from the Tri-Cities area in Washington State, please get in contact with Will.
Yeah, we may.
Go out and see this for us.
Great.